All right,
Yes.
so it's now 7:07. I'm going to call to order the Town of Wilmington Board of Appeals for May 27th, 2020. And as usual, I'm going to read this kind of verbose preamble into the record. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law under Mass General Law 38, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, members of the public who wish to watch and listen to the meeting may do so in the following manner. WCTV, Channel 9 under Comcast Xfinity, Channel 37 under Verizon Fios, and live stream on WCTV.org. This meeting of the Wilmington Board of Appeals is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately address the meetings in real time via technological means. Members of the public who would like to listen to the meeting while I'm getting a little feedback here. May also do so via telephone by dialing 1-646-558-8656 and enter meeting ID 853-6424-2125. Then press pound and press pound again at the next voice prompt. Members of the public attending this meeting virtually will be allowed to make comments if they wish to do so during the portion of the hearing designated for public comment by following the steps previously noted, then press *9 on their telephone keypad. This will notify the meeting host that the caller wishes to speak. All callers using this feature will be placed in queue in the order that they entered the prompt. In the event that despite our best efforts, we are not able to provide for real-time access, we will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as we are able. The only item on the docket tonight is a continued matter, case 920, Princeton Development LLC, 89 parcel 8, 9, 8, 9, 10, 13A and 13B, Middlesex Avenue and Jefferson Road, to acquire a comprehensive permit under Mass General Law 40B. So I will kick it open to whoever from the applicant wants to start us off and let us know what you're thinking for this particular meeting, and take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Andrew Chabin with Princeton Development. With me this evening, virtually, my business partner, Dan Endyke, Andrea Lathrop, and our in-house counsel, Jeff Brown. Also on the line is our traffic engineer, Jeff Dirk, from the firm of Vanessa and Associates, Rob Schaefer from the Rob Schaefer and David White Architects. Rob's been our longtime architect. And Joe Pesnola, who's our civil engineer who presented to you previously, will be on in about a half an hour or so. Wanted to just quickly update you, Mr. Chairman, on where we've been since our meeting with you 2 weeks ago this evening. Monday the 18th, the group of us all met with the department heads. Valerie organized the meeting, the town engineer, police, fire, etc. Hopefully comments have begun to come in to staff, and hopefully Valerie and Kelly can talk about that later in the meeting. This evening, Mr. Chairman, what I hoped to accomplish is for you to hear from Jeff Dirk, our traffic engineer. I think you'll be very pleased with his study and his conclusions. Then go to our architect, Rob Schaefer, who can present to you what's going above the ground, the things that Joe Pesnola presented at the last meeting. As I said, Jeff's been our traffic engineer for more than 20 years, and Rob has been our architect for the last number of projects that I can remember, including in Chelmsford, in Westford, and in North Andover. Joe Pesnola, as I said, will join us later, and if there's any civil engineering questions to wrap up from last week, Joe can certainly answer those. I'm hoping that after that, we can impose upon the town planner to talk about the peer review and the peer review contracts for water, for sewer, for civil engineering, and for traffic that the board voted on at the last meeting. I believe those are now all in process. And a 53G account has been set up with the town and has been funded by Princeton Development to cover the cost of the peer review consultants. You mentioned, Mr. Chairman, at the outset that the next meeting would be on June 10th, and I was hoping that when we're concluded that you'll have an opportunity to make sure that we'll have members available for the next meeting and for the dates going into the future for as many as you feel we'll need. Also, just wanted to mention to you that we have also opened with the Conservation Commission. We filed an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation. We were heard by them a week ago this evening on May 20th. That's now gone to peer review, and Joe Pesnola, the civil engineer, will be walking with the peer reviewer, and the civil engineering peer review is common to both the ZBA and to the Conservation Commission. So that's helpful, but I wanted to let you know that's kicked off. And then lastly, I failed to mention, and I was asked to mention this evening, we did not mention at the last meeting, part of our proposal involves the public safety building that I know the town has been anxious to try and get underway. It was not mentioned at the last meeting. Just wanted to let the members know that Princeton, over a 10-year period of time, has pledged $250,000 towards the public safety building project. And we would expect that if the board finds favorably for our project, that would be included as a condition to the comprehensive permit. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to turn it over to our traffic engineer, Jeff Dirk. Jeff?
I need to be unmuted. Oh, I guess I'm okay. I'm all set. I'm going to share my screen now. I have just a brief PowerPoint presentation, but as Andrew had mentioned, my name is Jeffrey Dirk. I'm a partner with Vanessa & Associates, and we're the traffic engineers for the project. So I'm just going to, as I said, I'm going to share the screen. I have a brief PowerPoint presentation just to go through on some facts and figures with respect to the traffic impacts of the project. And we appreciate the opportunity to have a peer review done with Green International. We've worked with them before, so we look forward to that, possibly discussing our responses to any comments they might have at a subsequent. So just in terms of just the summary of the findings of the transportation impact assessments, we work with the town to conduct the study. The study, it does follow the standard Mass DOT format that you're probably familiar with in terms of all of the requirements that we need to look at in conducting this assessment. One of the significant findings, or two of the significant findings, really deal with the scope and scale of the project. So at 108 multifamily residential units, we're expecting the project's going to produce 500 vehicle trips on a daily basis. It's actually around 490. During the peak hours, so when people are driving to or from work, we'll call it post-COVID conditions, we'll probably be generating somewhere between 40 and 45 peak hour vehicle trips, so not a significant impact. And what that really translates into in terms of peak hours, it's about one additional vehicle every 3 to 4 minutes. So that's a, as you kind of sit in silence for 3 to 4 minutes and kind of, I guess, contemplate, that's actually a long period of time. And that's why as we add the traffic, you get away from Jefferson Avenue, travel to High Street, travel to Concord Road to the west of the project site, the traffic numbers really decrease. So it's 40 to 45 vehicles right at Jefferson Road. And then as you get away from the site, the numbers actually get quite small as you get further away. In terms of the daily number, so I mentioned it's about 490 daily vehicle trips. So Middlesex Avenue, pre-COVID conditions, accommodated about 15,000 vehicles per day. So that's two-way traffic that we measured again prior to the stay-at-home order. So we're less than a 5% increase in traffic on a daily basis. So what that really means is we try to quantify that in terms of what you generally find in fluctuations of traffic volume. So Monday through Friday, generally under normal conditions, traffic volumes are a little low on Friday, a little low on Monday. But if you looked at it over the course of the week, traffic volumes will vary on Middlesex Avenue about 10% between Monday and Friday. So what the, less than a 5% increase means that the project really, in terms of impacts on Middlesex Avenue, it's within the normal Monday to Friday fluctuation of traffic volumes. And that also gets to why you get further away from the project site, and the traffic resulting from the development really won't impact motorist delays or vehicle queuing, because it's just within that normal typical daily fluctuation of traffic. Critical always in our traffic assessment is safety. So safety is two things that we look at. The first is motor vehicle crash history. So we look at 5 years worth of data along Middlesex Avenue at critical intersections, and also lines of sight at the driveways of the project site. So those are the two key safety things that we evaluate as a part of the project. So in looking at the motor vehicle crash history along Middlesex Avenue for the past 5 years, there's no significance in terms of crashes exceeding the state average, and there's no high crash locations. So Mass DOT publishes a list of high crash locations. It's updated annually. Just happy to report that there are no high crash locations along Middlesex Avenue, including the interchange with 93 and going all the way to Concord Road. So that's a good thing in terms of existing conditions. So as we're adding traffic, we want to make sure that we're not going to be exacerbating any pre-existing safety. We didn't find that based on the historic trends of motor vehicle crashes. And then looking at specific to lines of sight at the driveway. So I think when Joe Pesnola, you might have presented the site plan to you previously. So we're looking at sight lines at each of the access points into the project site. So there's one driveway off of Middlesex Avenue, and there's a couple of driveways off of Jefferson Road. And then of course, the building to the north end actually is an extension of Jefferson Road. So we looked at the lines of sight at all of those driveway intersections. We also looked at sight lines at the Jefferson Road intersection with Middlesex Avenue as well. And what we found was that the lines of sight at all of those locations exceed the minimum requirements for safe operation, not just for the posted speed, but for the speed that people are actually driving along Middlesex Avenue. Middlesex Avenue is a very low posted speed limit, around 25 miles an hour. People are going somewhere closer to 35 miles an hour, so about 10 miles an hour over the posted speed limit. So the sight lines that we're providing exceed what would be necessary for 35 mile an hour approach speed, the actual speed that people are driving on the roadway. We have made some recommendations along Jefferson Road. So if you've had a chance to do a site visit up there, you know that it's very vegetated along the project side, so the east side. So we have made some recommendations that what Joe Pesnola will actually do is we will plot the site triangles on his site plans. So that'll show you where those actual site triangles are, so where people are looking as they're exiting the driveway. And we'll add a note on the site plan that says that there shall be nothing in those site triangle areas that exceeds 2.5 feet in height to make sure that we maintain the clear sight line. So that might require some selective trimming of vegetation along the east side of Jefferson Road, but that would all occur within the project site and more than likely take place in conjunction with the construction of the project. No significant vegetation removal.
Mr. Dirk, I hate to interrupt you, but I just got a message that Ms. Santini wishes to ask a question. And I encourage any member of the board, I think we're all unmuted. So if anyone, obviously you don't want to interrupt someone in mid-sentence, but if anybody has a question from the board, just like in a regular meeting, you can feel free to pose that question. So Jackie, you had a question for Mr. Dirk?
Yes. So in that analysis, I was wondering, did you take, even though that it's not built yet, but have you taken into account a detox center or the building that's going to be functioning right on the other side of the railroad tracks that is going to have a lot of busy activity, or it will have activity?
So that development in terms of how it would impact it. So the numbers I'm talking about with respect to the additional traffic that we're going to add wouldn't change, because really I always describe it as, that project, it's certainly going to add traffic. And so it's going to add additional conflicts for especially vehicles exiting Jefferson Road, which, today during the peak hours, as you probably know, it's difficult to get out of there, particularly to make a left-hand turn. So those conditions are going to continue in the future with or without this project. That detox center will add traffic on Middlesex Avenue that will conflict with vehicles trying to exit Jefferson Road. In terms of how that will impact delays and specifically impact, the additional traffic the project's going to add, It's not going to significantly change that. However, what it may do is it will increase the number of vehicles that are potentially waiting to get out of Jefferson Road, because the conflicts going across Jefferson Road will increase with the detox center. I think that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, primarily their traffic, I think, is going to impact probably the morning time period more so than the afternoon. They typically have lower traffic volumes in the afternoon time period because usually the dosing and everything that takes place happens in the morning. I could be wrong because you've reviewed that project. But that's typically what would happen. So, but again, what I expect is, from the standpoint of how it will impact this project, it will add delays for people trying to get out of Jefferson Road. It might result in an increase in queuing, on the order of about one vehicle in terms of how it translates relating to this project.
Would you be doing another study down the line, or is this traffic study just for now, and we're going to make some decisions on this report only, but there's no future estimations on, do you do another traffic study, or is this it?
No. So I would absolutely suggest that what we've done is provided some information for you to be able to ask just the question like you just asked now. So this is going to give some background in terms of the amount of traffic the project's going to generate, and generalization of what the impacts will be, and then really looking at those safety conditions. But I fully expect that this is sufficient information for now your peer reviewer, when they look at it, to drill down on specific items that they may want us to look at. And certainly, I think it's a very valid question for them to come back to us to say, we know we've got this detox center right down the road. So quantify for us what happens at Jefferson Road with that detox center as a minimum level of analysis. So I fully expect that would be something that would come as a result of the peer review process. So yes, I expect there will certainly be additional information that will be available to you beyond this, and really just to look at this study to provide some information to you on the net increase in traffic, and then hopefully providing some information as to safety and functionality with respect to the project, the location of the driveways, and what our recommendations are for operations.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll move on, Mr. Chairman, if that's okay.
Sure.
So the next slide is really just the locus of the project site, which I'm sure you're very familiar with. So you can see the commuter rail tracks bounding the site to the west. Obviously, Jefferson Road bounds a portion of our site to the west as well. You see the High Street intersection, and then of course the railroad crossing just to the west of the project site. I mentioned the rail crossing because the rail crossing combined with the curvature of the roadway. So you can see the road is actually bending away from the crossing. That's important, and was important to us as we're looking at the sight lines coming out of Jefferson Road. Because as I mentioned, even though there's the bend in the road there and we have a 25-mile-an-hour posted speed limit, people are driving 35 miles an hour. So as you're looking from Jefferson Road, your sight line actually goes across the tracks, and then it just nicks the corner of the building that's there just to the east of the track. So what we wanted to make sure is that you actually have the proper sight lines because of the way that the curvature of the road is taking place. So I mentioned those two things because those are important as we're looking at the sight line. Obviously, when there's a train at the station and the crossing guards or the crossing gates are down, traffic is stopped. So sight lines, at least from that standpoint, aren't as critical coming around the corner there because traffic is moving much slower, in fact, stopped at the location. But you do have clear line of sight to the crossing. So that's another important piece that we had looked at as a part of our assessment. So the next slide presents the traffic projections for the project site. One of the things we did, of course, we have the benefit of having the flag stop commuter station there. So we're fully expecting, and we've designed the project, and you'll see later on our recommendations, we really want to encourage residents of this project to use public transportation. It's right outside their front door. I mean, it is a flag stop, but the trains do stop there. And so we're going to do a lot of measures to encourage people to use the commuter rail station. Looking at Wilmington as a whole and the census data that's available, the most recent update of sampling data is from 2016. And what that data shows is that on the whole for the town, about 15% of the residents use an alternative mode of transportation to single occupant vehicles. So they're either using, they're walking, biking. A significant portion actually work from home and did pre-COVID conditions, but still a significant number. So what we did as a part of this analysis is we said about 90% of the trips we're assuming would be made by automobile. 10% would be made by an alternative mode. We've said it's transit in this analysis because we're hoping that probably the bulk of the residents would use the commuter rail station. But again, if you looked at Wilmington as a whole, about 15% use an alternative mode of transportation. Within the multifamily developments, an important piece of this is work from home accommodations. And so that's typically built into a lot of the residential projects. And we expect that that will be a part of this project, and we encourage it to be a part of this project. So you will find that there is a significant portion of residents that will work from home, given these amenities that would be available within the site. That doesn't mean they don't necessarily get in the car and go to work at some point in the day, but what it does allow them to do is choose the times at which they're able to come into work. So if you're able to, let's say you want to just avoid traffic during the morning peak hour, having the ability to have work from home workspaces, to be able to say 7 to 9, you work at your apartment using the work at home workspace, and then you drive into work, allows for these kind of, it's called peak shedding. And that's what this table would represent as well. So that during the commuter peak hours, we have a lower amount of traffic than would typically be generated, and that work from home workspaces allows for that to take place. So looking at the far right-hand side of the column or the table, what you see is those traffic numbers that I had estimated. So this is net increase in traffic that we're attributing to the project. So you can see it's 490, just under 500 vehicle trips on a daily basis during each of the commuter peak hours. So weekday morning peak hours. So this is the highest traffic volume hour between 7 and 9 in the morning. During that time period, Middlesex Avenue has about 1,000 vehicles two-way on it. We're going to add about 33 vehicles to that 1,000. You have about the same number in the evening peak hour, so it's just a little over 1,000 vehicle trips on vehicles on Middlesex Avenue. We're going to add about 43 vehicles to that, just over 1,000 vehicles on that roadway during that time period. So that's, again, how we get to that net increase in traffic that we're predicting as a result of the project. So just in terms of the recommendations that we had made as a result of this analysis, I had gone through with you, we looked at the sight lines, we looked at safety on the roadway. So these are kind of the recommendations that we had with respect to how the project site itself should operate and some recommendations for circulation. And I'll just kind of hit upon some of the high points. Some of these are probably pretty basic in terms of things you'd be looking for anyways, in terms of driveway width for two-way traffic. But just a couple of unique things for this project that we've recommended. So on Jefferson Road, we do have sufficient parking to accommodate our project, but we want to make sure is that that parking stays within the project site. Jefferson Road is not a roadway, as you know, that should have on-street parking. So we've suggested that no parking signs or no stopping signs, depending on how the town wants to do it, should be provided along both sides of Jefferson Road. It's our opinion we have sufficient parking within our site to accommodate all of the parking demands that we have, and visitor parking as well as resident parking, and anything related to Uber, Lyft, and pick up and drop off operations. So that's all been designed to accommodate in-site. But just to make sure that we don't have off-site parking, we've recommended that you do post no parking signs along Jefferson Road. I had mentioned about the sight lines and making sure that they stay clear. So specific with regard to Building A, and this is the building that's closest to Middlesex Avenue, one of the driveways, we've recommended that you basically trim the trees and vegetation, and we selectively trim. So we don't only want to remove what's necessary to provide the site triangles that are necessary. The other important thing for Building A, when you look at the Jefferson Road intersection with Middlesex Avenue and the sight lines, if you look at the site triangle, it actually passes through or quite close to where the parking will be that's proposed for that building along Middlesex Avenue. Locating or putting the site triangles on the site plans are important because we want to make sure there's no parking allowed within that site triangle area. So any parking needs to be outside of that site triangle area. And the other thing that we've recommended is that we want to make sure that the residents have the ability to be able to walk from Building B at the north end all the way to the sidewalk that exists on Middlesex Avenue, because there are, as you know, shopping and shopping opportunities along that roadway. So we want to make sure that we've got a sidewalk to be able to link the residential buildings to the sidewalk on Middlesex Avenue. So that again, the goal here really is reduce off-site traffic associated with the project. So that sidewalk is very important to make sure that we have that connectivity so residents have that opportunity. So the last series of our initial recommendations deal with that connectivity and encouraging residents to be able to use public transportation. So that's what you see here is a list of transportation demand management program components that will be a part of the project. So the first thing is obviously to make sure that the residents understand they have this amenity right next door or right outside their front door. So that's the first two bullet points, is making sure that they have the schedules, maps, whatever required information. A lot of that is provided as a part of a welcome packet to new residents. It's also part of any website-based materials as well. So if you're searching for apartment, this is an amenity related to this project. So we want to make sure that that's something that's, you know, right out in the forefront here, that it's there. And this is something that will attract residents that want to use public transportation to live here. And again, that reduces the traffic demands associated with the project. The work at home workspaces is important as well. So that's really just like a business office. So making sure that there's a printer. We used to say a fax machine, but that's kind of out of date at this time. But make sure that they've got a printer, a copier, things like that, so that they don't have it in their apartment. They're able to come down and use that workspace. And it may also involve in the future, a conference room, whether a conference room is built into it and it's open in the future with social distancing, whatever happens to be kind of the norm as we go forward, is important as well. Collaboration is important. We're doing it virtually tonight, but you know, hopefully face-to-face collaboration will be something in the future. And so that's typically something that's built in a work at home workspace as a part of the common area of the project as well. I mentioned these pedestrian accommodations. Bicycle parking is important as well. Middlesex Avenue has wide shoulders for bicycle travel. There is sufficient width out there for share the road accommodations. So we want to make sure we have exterior bicycle racks for visitors that may be coming in, and then weather protected bicycle parking. So covered parking is within the project site. So those are two important things to get people to ride bicycles. A central mail kiosk, it may seem very obvious, but you want to make sure that you've got a central mail location so that people aren't, to the extent that they don't have to, we don't want them driving to the post office. Again, limits off-site trips. And then a new thing that's added to buildings now is what's known as these transit screens or displays. So what these are is in the building lobbies, and you may have seen this in some office buildings. What it is basically it's a transit screen. There's a company that operates these, and what it does is it'll tell you when the next commuter rail train is coming into Wilmington Station or any of the other stations. It'll tell you if there's delays on any of the subway lines. It also gives you information in terms of traffic congestion on the roadway. So this is basically it's a screen. It cycles through, it provides all this information, so that what you can do is you go down to the building lobby and you can see, you know, when the next train is coming, or if you're going to drive into the Orange Line, let's say, at Wellington Station, you'll know if there's delays on the train. So it's all about timing your commute and when you're going to be leaving the building to make sure that if there's delays, you can time your commutes appropriately. So it's about managing traffic demands to make sure that we're making the most efficient use of the transportation system, and then encouraging people again to use the public transportation so that they know when the next train is coming, or if there's a delay, they can go back to their apartment, log back onto their computer, you know, do some work from home and then come back down. So it's all about that. It's about timing your commute. So that concludes my presentation. So I will end that.
Any members of the board have any additional questions on the traffic aspect of the presentation?
I do.
Go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, okay. So a couple questions that I have for you. Basically, one of the questions is, you generally have you talked to Eli's owners or whatnot when people are coming down to get in there? It's a very popular place. Have you taken into account, you know, probably like maybe later in the afternoon, there's a lot of cars that are trying to get into Eli's. I mean, how do you?
So it's not I'm sorry. So it's not so much the entry, because so our Jefferson Road is, if I recall right, is opposite their exit, right? So they're entering actually to the west of the site. So it won't affect their entering. We will be competing with them for the exiting move. And the good thing is Jefferson Road's aligned directly opposite. So from the standpoint of conflicts, we will be adding traffic obviously to Jefferson Road exiting. So there'll be some increased traffic on that roadway. But the other thing to remember is that there are existing businesses that operate along Jefferson Road. There's the restaurant that's there. There's a couple of existing uses that are in the buildings that will be removed as a part of the project. So you can see the dry cleaners is going away. There's some other uses in the other building that's on the west, on our side of Jefferson Road. So we are eliminating some traffic and then adding our traffic into that as well. So what they may find, or what the experience may actually be at the intersection, is that we're removing some traffic and then adding our traffic. So the net increase is actually going to be quite small over what's out there today. But we will be adding traffic to Jefferson Road that will conflict with exiting traffic from Eli's. I don't expect it's going to be a large number when you account for the fact that we're removing some existing uses.
Let me ask you, I guess this is to the applicant in general. That other building, which doesn't appear as part of the site plan, on the other side where I guess right now there's maybe an optician in there, is that going to remain as is? Anybody?
So I think Andrew's on mute. It seems to be carved out. When I looked at the site plan, we assume that building remained.
Okay, so that building is going to remain, as far as you know, it's going to be, well, I shouldn't say unaffected, but it's not going to be changed at all because of your project.
Mr. Chairman, I'm unmuted. So the office building itself will remain. It will be re-sided, and the architecture will be such that it will blend in with our project so that the roadway and everything looks the same. So the retail will go away and the office building will remain.
Oh, okay, because it looks like, I mean, it looks like it might be one building, but maybe two angles to it. There's, so you're
right.
saying one of those is going to be removed?
The retail at the intersection of Middlesex and Jefferson is what will be removed. The office building that's toward the back will remain.
Is that, are you guys doing that? Or are you collaborating with that landowner? Is that part of the whole project here?
So the land seller for us owns the retail and also owns the office building.
Okay.
So we are buying, in essence, what comes down to two parcels, which is, call it the retail, and then the large parking lot that's out back. The office building will remain. And as part of this process, Mr. Chairman, later on, in essence, we'll be going through for lack of a better word, an approval not required to separate the lots so that the office building will exist in a conforming fashion going forward on its own.
So there is a retail component of that structure that is going to be removed, not to be replaced.
The retail out front,
Yep.
so I'm clear, where the dry cleaner, the pizza shop, that is what is intended to be removed. The office building that's toward the rear, that I think probably does have a few retail shops in it, but in essence, it's an office building. Is the way it's zoned. That office building will remain and be resided.
Okay, so I mean, do you see, and I'll put this to Mr. Dirk, do you see any effect on the traffic based upon the removal of that retail portion of that building? Is that, I would assume that it would have a slightly, a small de minimis effect to it, or not?
So the net increase in traffic will actually go down with removal of the retail building and the dry cleaners that are there. So traffic volumes will go down. Then we're going to add our traffic on top of it. And I think what you'll see is even those numbers I had presented to you, the 33 and the 43 during the peak hours, those are, if you take out the traffic from those other uses, those numbers are they're going to go down. They may get cut in half, and that might be a little extreme. But I think what you're going to see is numbers net increase from the project in the order of about 20 trips by the time you remove those other uses.
So you're saying it's going to mitigate the increase in traffic from your project?
That's absolutely right. Yes. Yeah. And I was glad to hear the office building was going to stay, because that's my optometrist. So that was good news to me.
It's my optometrist too. He's a great guy.
Yes, he is yes. I've been with him for a long time. Yes, he's great.
That was actually part of the reason I asked the question.
Yes, yes. I saw a prior iteration of a plan from somebody else that removed that building. That raised some concern for me.
Anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. When was the traffic study done?
So the traffic count, so the traffic study was done recently in terms of the measurements. However, the traffic counts were done in, I believe, October of 2018, so pre-COVID. And just by way of, I guess, information. So the Department of Transportation, obviously, and as us as traffic engineers, we are not conducting traffic counts now, just because of that. Mass DOT has issued guidance in terms of what, as traffic engineers, and what we need to include in traffic studies, what they will allow for any current studies that are taking place. And so what those guidance say is we are allowed to use traffic counts that are up to 6 years old. So we can go back 6 years from now, and then they have a methodology of how you need to adjust those traffic volumes to bring those to current conditions. So there is something, there's a methodology that's in place. The numbers and the speed measurements I had mentioned to you were from October of 2018. So it's valid data, and we will be using that information to the extent that any more rigorous analysis is required. We may do traffic counts at Jefferson Road if your consultant asks us to do that, if there's not data available. However, we will use the older traffic count data to make whatever adjustments are necessary to bring it current.
Okay, and then to follow on that, as far as the train station there, I'm sure there'll be increased activity there with very limited parking. I would assume that there's going to be a number of people coming from the facility over to the train station. So how did you accommodate that as far as parking and backing up traffic to try to get people in and out or waiting or whatever?
Sure. So the nice thing obviously is because of where the site is located, so people are going to walk. So their cars will stay at the project site and they'll walk over to get on the train, which is a good thing. The caution I always say to developers, especially when you're looking at parking ratios, is there's still a car at the site. So just because people are going to walk to get to the commuter rail station and they don't have to drive, they're going to leave their car at the site, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have a reduced parking requirement for the project or that the numbers go down, because the car just stays there and the person walks and gets on the train. So this is from the standpoint of impact on the commuter rail station, this is a great project for that, because it's not going to impact or increase the parking at the commuter rail station because the residents are going to just walk over there. That's why building a sidewalk along Jefferson Avenue and providing crosswalks to walk safely from the site over to the train station is very important, so that people are not getting in their cars and they're going to walk over.
So those sidewalks, will they be the responsibility of the town to clear them?
Jefferson Road, is that it's a town accepted way?
It is not, Jeff. That's going to be internal to the project site, and that will be taken care of privately by the developer. The town will not be handling those sidewalks. We will.
Thank you, Jeff. Or Andy. That's Andrew. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a few questions. Am I being heard?
Yeah,
Yes.
all the members of the board, to my knowledge, are unmuted at this portion of the meeting.
Okay, a couple of questions I have. The small parking lot on the left side of Jefferson Ave, as you come in Jefferson Ave, has an entrance onto Jefferson Ave, but also has an existing entrance onto Middlesex Ave that is directly adjacent to the Jefferson Road entrance.
Yes.
That to me seems like that's a conflict
Correct.
and actually a hazard that should probably be corrected in this part of this project.
So I think that, I believe it has Jersey barriers across it, and I think it's it's not, it's open today. I thought I had seen barriers across that. And it comes out on the Middlesex Avenue?
If you on the site plan, it's probably 20 feet away or 15 away from the entrance to Jefferson. Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about for the project going into where building A is?
No, to the just past the Jefferson Road entrance, there is a second entrance into that parking lot that's adjacent to Jefferson Road.
Okay, on the west side?
Yeah, was the north arrow.
So Jefferson Road goes north-south.
So, yes, it would be just to the west of Jefferson Ave. There's a curb
Yes.
cut there. I've driven through it many times.
Yeah, I do see that. So I don't disagree with you that it's close to the intersection.
I just think, well, let me just finish my comment
Yes.
and then, so I think this intersection at Jefferson Ave, I think what's not shown on the site plan right now, and I don't have the full traffic study in front of me, but I think the entrance and the exits to Eli's, to me, are being a little bit understated, because I come down Middlesex Ave from Andover every day, and many times I stop to go into Eli's, and there is a queue to get into Eli's, and that queue sometimes blocks the traffic coming out of Eli's, which is basically going to block Jefferson Road.
Right.
And I think that the traffic study, or at least our peer review, should take into consideration the entrances and exits to Eli's and the proximity to Jefferson and the added traffic that's going to be at a peak time, which I think a lot of people go to Eli's at a peak time. Sometimes you can't even find a parking spot in there at 5:30. And, you know, I just think that, you know, to Jackie's point, I think it's being a little understated, the congestion that Eli's causes. And, you know, this other parcel right in front of us that we're talking about, that I know that this developer isn't going to develop at this time, but there could be some type of a retail or commercial use in there that would, you know, potentially, if we don't clean up this other little exit right now, there could be an exit there sometime in the future. Maybe Valerie and the planning board have already addressed this, and I'm not aware of, but I think that's kind of a little concern to me, that I just like to see our traffic consultant peer review look at a little bit or comment on.
Yeah, that's a valid point. I mean, there was a lot of driveways there, so we can take a look at that and see. I mean, I think that, you know, to the extent that there's queuing going into Eli's, you know, we're certainly not going to exacerbate it. However, if it blocks Jefferson Road, then what it comes down to is that queuing I had mentioned. If you can't get out, then you start to have those backups happening along Jefferson Road. And I do agree with you with respect to the driveway to the parking lot, that for the commuter rail, let's say, on the west side of Jefferson Road, in terms of that access point. I'm thinking it's there because of circulation. You typically, with a number of those spaces, you want to have one way in and one way out, or you know, to be able to clear out that parking lot if necessary. But certainly, yeah, I mean, looking at the number of driveways there and the number of conflict points, I agree that that's something that we should look at.
The other question I have is I guess it would be the second entrance you have to the east of the site. So for me, you know, people coming down Middlesex Ave, it seems like that would be highly used to enter could be used to enter the site, with people coming home, let's say in a peak hour coming off 93.
Mhm.
That entrance up there would be highly, I think, heavily used by people who live in that. It's almost like a little shortcut cut through the parking lot instead of coming down to the Jefferson Road entrance. Are
Right.
there any concerns about, you know, that becoming an issue, you know, cutting through that parking lot is a safety issue?
Right. So one of the things I recommended, I didn't point this out when I was speaking about the circulation for the project site. So if you turn from Middlesex Ave onto Jefferson Road, the first driveway to Building A that you come to, which is close to Middlesex Avenue, I've suggested that needs to be that needs to be an entrance only. So if you do that, and that's an entrance only, if you come in the driveway from Middlesex Avenue directly to where Building A is, I don't believe you'll be able to get out of the site. You'll only be able to get to Building A. And so that's done. So making the entrance, the first driveway to Building A as you turn on Jefferson Road, if that's a one-way entrance, then you will circumvent the ability to be able to get from Middlesex Avenue, cut through Building A to get to Jefferson Road, let's say to get to Building B or to that office building. You won't be able to do that.
At the entrance only is gonna be the main Jefferson Road entrance?
No, I don't know if you have the site plan in front of you, but if you turn from Jefferson, if you turn from Middlesex Avenue, so if I'm coming from 93 and I turn onto Jefferson Road from Middlesex Avenue,
Yep,
there's a driveway to Building A that's probably within 50 feet or so,
yes,
suggesting that that needs to be an entrance only and not an exit because it's too close to Middlesex Avenue. So what that does is the only way you can basically get out of the project site is for Building A anyways, is to come out back onto Middlesex Avenue, which is where we want it to be, on the Middlesex Avenue driveway. But if I'm coming from 93 and I turn in that first driveway, what I'm trying to do is make it so that you can't short circuit turning onto Jefferson Road, so that you're not doing a cut through Building A. So I agree, we don't want that to happen. And so we've tried to make recommendations on the access and circulation for the Building A so that you don't cut through the project site. That Building A, basically the driveways only serve Building A.
okay.
Mr. Chairman, Brian Goudreau from Hancock Associates, our civil engineer, is on. And if we could ask Brian Brian, is what Jeff is saying, the way the project is currently designed? I just want to make sure Mr. Barletta's question's been answered appropriately.
That's correct. So the entrance on Jefferson is going to become an entrance only, and the only way to access Building A is off of Middlesex Avenue.
Does that answer the question, Mr. Barletta?
I think so.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Actually, can I just ask, did you say that you were gonna put a bike, there's gonna be a bike path or bike section on Middlesex, or were you talking about Jefferson?
No, so what I was mentioning is that Middlesex Avenue is sufficiently wide with the travel lane and the shoulder so that you could ride a bike on Middlesex Avenue. It meets the Mass DOT criteria for a shared use roadway. So someone could actually ride a bike on Middlesex Avenue. And if you're driving along Middlesex Avenue and there's a bicyclist there, you don't need to cross the center line to go by the bicyclist. So it meets the shared road criteria. So because of that, what I've said is that within the project site, that we're going to provide bicycle accommodations. And so that would be a bike rack for visitors exterior to the building, and then within the building to have a weather protected bicycle area. So basically a bike room, so that if you want to commute by bicycle, we're providing everything on the project site to allow you to be able to safely store your bicycle. And then the other thing I had mentioned is that Middlesex Avenue is sufficiently wide so that you can ride your bike.
But when is the road getting redone, or if the road does get redone, you're not specifically putting a bike lane on the road?
No, we're not proposing to install bike lanes, no.
My huge concern is there's a crosswalk that is a little bit up from the entrance that we're talking about from Jefferson. So you have a crosswalk, you've got people coming and going. I find that your traffic study somehow logically doesn't accommodate for something that, I mean, right now it's pretty busy without 108 units. And I know that you said I think you're basically assuming that more people are going to be working from home, or if they see that it's busy outside, I can't get the train, they're going to go back into their unit and work from home. I think there's a lot of assuming there that, oh, it's morning traffic. Oh, I'm going to change my work schedule. I
No,
know.
we're not assuming that. Yeah, no, I don't want to, I guess we're providing all of the opportunities for people to make those choices. The traffic analysis does not, and I want to be very clear, the traffic analysis does not assume people are going to make those choices. The traffic analysis assumes, even though we give you all of this information, you're going to ignore it, and you are still going to get in your car and you're going to drive. So it's kind of the worst case scenario, because that's what we want to design for. So it has not, what I'm saying is we're providing everything that we possibly can to encourage people to make these choices, but we're not assuming that they're going to, because if we do, it would be exactly what you're saying, which is that, well, then you understated it and you got all this traffic and you never accounted for it. The other thing with respect to the crosswalks and traffic as well that I want to make clear is there are existing commercial uses that are there that are being removed. Those commercial uses generate traffic that will not be there, and now we're going to add some traffic. It's not it's not something where I would say to you it's a replacement project. We're going to pull these commercial uses out of place, put the residential in, and you're not going to see any increase in traffic. That's not true. You will. The increase in traffic will not be as great. But the other thing to recognize is that if you look at those commercial uses on the, so it's the, I guess it's the northeast corner of the Jefferson Middlesex Avenue intersection, those commercial uses there have wide open driveways that empty right out onto Jefferson Road without any curbing or definition to that. Those vehicles back right out into the roadway. To some extent on Middlesex Avenue. They conflict with the pedestrian crosswalks that you had mentioned there. If you look at this site plan, we're installing curbing, we're defining all of the traveled way, we're getting rid of all of these interactions of vehicles backing out into the roadway. And in fact, the parking gets moved further away from Middlesex Avenue, further away from Jefferson Road. So any parking maneuvers and things that are taking place are removed from the intersection, removed from where pedestrians are. So that also provides some benefit just by setting the buildings back, installing curbing and defining driveways. So it does result in improvements. There are a lot of driveways in this small section of Middlesex Avenue. And so that's something we need to look at. And that's a very valid thing to come back to you with some information on. But there's a lot of betterments that are coming as a result of this project to eliminate those conflicts.
So thank you. But one point that I have to beg to differ, I don't think it's as busy. You have a real estate company that is, you know, then you have the dry cleaners. I hardly see people there. I mean, it's just a car here or there. You have the carpet place that was there, that's not there. I mean, you'd see a few cars. You'd always just see a few cars in the front. I just see it differently. It's not as busy on that side in my mind. I mean, I think Eli's is busier. So, and I hope that, you know, the driveway situation openings will be addressed or looked at. So thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, Andrew, would you like to proceed?
I would, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask if we could ask Mr. O'Neill to let Joe Pesnola, who's our civil engineer, he's sort of waiting, I guess, in the wait room. He's kind of late to the meeting, so if they could let him in, that would be helpful.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, next I'd like to turn it over to Rob Schaefer, who is the project architect, so that he can go through everything, if you will, above the ground. And Rob, why don't you take it from here?
Great, good evening, and thank you. I'll share. Yeah, I'll share my screen. Okay, so I thought I'd walk through the drawings that were submitted, use those as a way to walk through the project. First, I'll bring into the schedule of units on the front cover page. So we have 108 units with 51 one-bedrooms, an additional 3 one-bedroom handicap units, 41 two-bedrooms with additional 2 handicap 2-bedrooms, and then the 11 3-bedroom units to comply with the 40B requirements. Looking at a typical floor for building A, that's how we would spread them out around that building with an extra storage amenity area in the middle, the elbow, and then the 2 stairs at each end, the elevator over on the right there. I'll explain how that elevator will work as we walk through it. At this point, its access is from quarter side. Then if we look at building B, this is how they would be distributed with the 3 bedrooms at the back corners, 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms spread out around the rest of the building, elevator at the right, and stair on the left. If we look at the first floor of this one, 2 units were taken out and would provide a storage amenity area with a mechanical electric room on that floor because it's a slab on grade building. When we go to building A, on that first floor, community office area, which would have the fitness area, the leasing office, and that would be at the upper right end of the building, close to the main entrance to the building, using the elevator or stair to access the leasing office for the project. And if we go 1 floor down from there, we have the parking under building A for the 46 spaces as laid out as you see. In the lower right corner would be the mechanical electric room. We have 2 handicap spaces in there with the aisle between them for direct access to the elevator across from it, right in here. The drive entrance comes over from the left, as you saw in the site plan earlier. So that would come in here as a garage door, access down through the building and from that direction. We also provide these small storage areas around the perimeter of the building that align with the floor footprint above. So we would provide tenant storage or bike storage and things of that nature for the tenants to utilize on this floor as they so desire based on their request. Let's jump to building B. So this is a slab on grade building. This is modeled after the Princeton North Andover type project, which I'll show you pictures of in a moment. Maintaining the building height, 49'10" to the midpoint of the roof slope, utilizing a peak roof, which I think gives this project a better look. And so we can maintain that 55 height easily with this building, being a slab on grade and the 4 stories, which provide a 9-foot ceiling for all the units on all floors, good sized windows for a comfortable Class A apartment. On building A, that same unit size and ceiling height remains, but it's pushed up a little bit to allow for that garage level underneath, so that portion of it to maintain that 4 stories is below grade with a small portion above it to deal with the site issues that we had to work out based on soils information that we got. So this is allowing us though still to maintain that 55-foot limitation to the midpoint of the roof as defined by Wilmington's restrictions. And I think it provides a better cap to it for the roof. Now, as you can see, doing a mix of materials, we have the board and batten at the ends and across the top to break up the height of the building, with the clapboards in the middle, 2 floors with a few elements like the shingles from above, from below coming up to above, and then the shingles spread out around the bottom to give it a nice base level to the building. The entrance areas have a covered roof and vestibule at each entrance. Now this is where you can see how the elevator has to be a 2-sided elevator in order to accommodate the grade midpoint in the floor. So you would enter at this level, go to the elevator, and then you would go up half a floor to go to the first floor, go down to the garage if so be it, or come from the garage and continue up, and then go up or half flight of stairs to the amenity area, which is right in this general area right here. Let's see. So then, let's see, I think I gotta share each picture. So let's see. Where did the pictures go? I had them open. share that. Why aren't they? There we go. Okay, so this will be an aerial view of the Princeton project in North Andover, showing how you see these are all slab on grade buildings. They'd be the similar configuration as building B for the Wilmington project. You can see the entrance area with the covered, I guess you can't see my cursor, but you can see it there on the left building between the cars. There's an entrance area. This is a little bit shallower slope roof, but Wilmington were able to get a little bit more pitch in it, and so that would help give it a better roof slope, as you saw in the elevations. Then I'll switch to the other one. Share that one. And it's the same project from another angle. They're finishing up pavement down the bottom there, but you can see the same project and its relationship to the site and how it dresses out when it's done. Some better pictures of it up close. This one here. Zoom. There it is. This one. There. So there's the building in its finished state. You can see the board and batten and how they would work, the decks, just to get a good sense and a feel for how the project would look. One other picture to share with you. This one here. So it's the same building over on the right. This one happens to have the clubhouse, but you can see all the relationship of the building over on the right is there. And then if you look behind me, that would be an example of the pool amenity we would be put behind the building, taking advantage of the river and things like that. Just kidding. Just thought I'd throw that out there for fun. But I think that gives you an overall sense of how the project would play out in Wilmington, following the similar detailing, materials, and size that we did in North Andover. Being well received, and the residents are very happy there. So,
Mr. Chair, may I ask questions?
Sure.
let me take off my share here. Hold on.
Well, you could leave that. So in that picture there, what's the height of that building?
This
Which
one,
building, Jackie?
Well, not the clubhouse, but
you're
the
looking for, let me give you the other building.
the apartment building
This one here.
with the nice sun. Yeah,
That
that
one?
one.
Yeah, to the eve, it would be the same height. Let's see, it would be 33 plus 9, about 42, 43 foot to the eve right here.
So that building is shorter than the one that you want to build on Jefferson.
Is the same height as building B. This would be shorter than the one for building A because of the garage, bringing this building up slightly.
All right, so I'm sorry. So building A is how high in Wilmington?
Let me bring that up and you can see it clearly that way.
So A and B and Wilmington are two different heights.
Correct.
Correct. Remember that the front building, what we're calling building A, has a garage under.
This one here. So here's the first floor right there. And then we had to bring it up a few feet in order to fit the garage underneath it. The height from first floor up is the same for building B or the ones in North Andover. But this one is a few feet up, as you can see here. It may get you to that 54 foot 4 inches to the mean of the roof.
And then what's building B, the height?
That one's, I think it was 49 foot. I can show you the section here in a sec.
Yeah.
So this is 49 foot 10. And this is
And then, so the one that you just built for North Andover, what is that height?
to the eve, it's would be the same as this, about 43. To the mean roof, it's a little bit lower.
So my point in asking that is why, if you did it in North Andover, why can't you make the one in Wilmington this similar height so that it's not so tall? Or
Quite honestly, you're welcome to take a look at North Andover, but it is shallower than I would like. A little bit more slope in the roof, you see it, and it helps, I think, the overall appearance of the project. That roof, we were restricted by for other reasons for that project, but it is very shallow. It's a 3.5 to 12 slope, and you almost don't even see the roof in certain aspects of the site, where it is nicer to bring up the slope a little bit and get a top to the roof, a top to the building, and using that roof to do that is, I think, helps the project overall.
But
Gives it
with
that
all due,
appearance.
Ms.
with all
Santini, maybe I can give some clarity to the answer for North Andover. We are up against the Lawrence Municipal Airport in
Yeah.
North Andover, and so the roof heights are somewhat restricted there, and so the shallowness of the roof was dictated by the FAA. And so we went with a shallower roof than we would like, but that is the only thing that was permissible in that zone. I think what Rob is saying is that to get a more colonial or New England look and to give more pronouncement to it, we would like the roof to have a little bit more pronunciation to it. So that's the difference.
but with all due respect, with that pronunciation, you're making it even taller in an area where it's gonna just feel like it's on top of you, when that section is so condensed, so dense right now. I mean, you got 4 stories, 54, over 54 feet high. I mean, if you had a way of, again, condensing the roof to make it feel a little bit smaller.
Well, I would direct you to this picture I just brought up, and you can't even see the roof.
Yeah, but who
That's-
cares about the roof? I don't
We
know.
do.
Why do we care?
I think
Why
it-
do
I think it
why
makes
do
a
you
big
care about the
difference.
roof so much?
Well, I think it offers a finishing appearance to the top of the building when you can get the roof to show up and when you're looking at it on site.
Can I, Mr. Chair, can I have Tony chime in of why that seems to be an importance, and that is, maybe I'm missing something?
I think, Jackie, I think what he's saying, whether you accept it or not, is that aesthetically, when you can see a roof on a finished building, it gives it a more complete appearance architecturally. You know, and now we hear that there was a specific limitation in that town because of an airport. Now, whether you agree with that or not, I mean, I'm not an architect, but I tend to agree with what the gentleman said. When I look at that picture in North Andover, it looks a little bit unfinished. It looks like when are they going to put the roof on? But that's just me. But I believe what he was trying to say, and I don't want to speak for the architect because I'm not one, but I think he was talking about aesthetics.
But with it being so close to the road, I don't think you're even gonna see the roof. That's just my comment.
I brought up this picture to show how that you can see it on the right there versus the clubhouse on the left has a more comfortable slope to it.
Yeah,
It
but it's a
looks
lot
squat
lower.
to me. Pardon me?
It's lower. The clubhouse is a lot lower, so I could understand that. But when you do a 4-floor building,
Jackie, I look at a lot of these new buildings that are being constructed now. If you look at a lot of the buildings, I think that are up by, in Burlington off of that, 3rd Ave and all that area, a lot of them have flat roofs. They're a lot more modern in design. And, I agree with you 100%. When you're standing at the street, your angle of view looking up at the eave, you may not even see the roof of the front building. The building in the rear, you definitely see the roof because you're far enough away from the building. So, I mean, it's a tall building, and, there's different ways to look at the roof. I mean, there could be a flat roof on this and it could be a much more modern design. And somebody could say that that's better looking. I mean, I think it's open to interpretation. My concern more is on the building A. The first floor elevation is at about 92.5, which is about 6 feet above the existing grade. And the basement, I believe, is about 6 feet below the existing grade. My question is that been engineered, and do you know that's where those floors are gonna land, or is that a guess right now?
Joe?
Pretty near engineered. We might be a few inches different, but we have looked at the water table. We've looked at other aspects of the project that need to be addressed, and this is what we're arriving at should be workable from various aspects. Joe, Joe
what
can
looks-
chime in a little bit on that too, if he has a little
Because
more
what looks-
background on that.
Because what looks, when you can look at the roof and you comment on the roof, but what looks less desirable to me is the fact that the base of the first floor is perceivable, very perceivable that it's above the ground. And unless the building is landscaped well along the building and plantings to kind of mask that, it's gonna, to me, that's more of a aesthetic concern than, the overall design. I mean, I've seen these buildings go up everywhere. So it's, I understand why the building architecture is what it is. It's that way based on economy, and that's not going to change. But so my question is about the base, and then you had made a comment, Andrew, I think one, or maybe it was the architect. The first comment was that you guys set the ceiling heights at 9 feet. Is that typical, 9 feet for these level of apartments? Because if you look at 9 feet over 4 floors, that's 4 feet in building height. If you came down to 8 feet, or 2 feet in building height, if you came down to 8.5 feet. So my question is 9 feet standard for these type of apartments?
It's absolutely standard now, Mr. Barletta. In the race to be able to, let's say, afford to construct these, given today's construction costs, et cetera, not only are things like stainless steel appliances and granite countertops and crown molding and those kinds of things necessary to be able to gain the rental rate that's necessary to compete, but ceiling height is also important. 9 feet is the standard, and has been the standard for at least 5 to 7 years now. A traditional, call it 2.5 story building from the early 70s would be 8 feet. And was simply done, as you well know, I don't need to tell you, because that's the length of a piece of sheetrock. So going to 9 feet is not done cavalierly, because it costs more money, because you don't have finished sheets. It means additional work. It means more cutting and taping, and it's more expensive to do it. But that is sort of the minimum standard for new construction buildings of this sort at present. To answer your question about the first floor and the landscaping and sort of why it's working there, I think we'll certainly, hopefully we can unmute Joe Pesnola, who's the project engineer, and he can walk through that with you. The first iteration of the project did not have parking under in building A. It had parking behind the building. There's always a push-pull when you are dealing with resource area that is adjacent to a property like this. In looking at what we wanted to do with the buildings and what we really wanted to be able to provide to the Conservation Commission and those who have interest in the project, we went out, and as I mentioned, we're doing an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation. We really took the most conservative approach to make sure that the Conservation Commission would be happy. And instead of putting the parking on grade behind the building, we tucked the parking for building A under and left enough room to make sure that we were not going to have any issues. We didn't want competing priorities between the zoning of the project and the conservation aspects of the project. So we tucked the parking underneath. What that means is that the street front, and again, we have to rent the apartments, we're going to have to do a fairly extensive landscaping job, to Mr. Barletta's point. And I'll bring Joe in here now to explain that, but there's no question that's going to happen. Joe?
Certainly. Again, for the record, Joe Pesnola from Hancock Associates. As far as the setting of the elevations, we did soil testing to establish groundwater elevations, and we've fully designed the stormwater management system to meet those groundwater offsets required. So we're confident that the elevations that we've presented are true. And as Mr. Schaefer said, maybe in the final design, there's an inch or two of deviation based on final design of garage drains and so forth. But yeah, we're there on that. We have submitted a very preliminary landscape plan, and we know that during this process, we will evolve that based on this kind of input to, as Andrew said, come up with what the final landscaping will be, which will be our front view, our curb appeal, our attraction to get residents to want to come here and stay here. So we see that evolving as we get through peer review and get some of the technical things behind us, and we get down to buffering, screening, landscaping, and the more refinements that we normally see in a 40B process, as it evolves, as it moves through this review process.
Can I ask a question? How did I ask this? Could it be possible to switch the building A and B location, like switch them? So if you want to have this, the height a little bit less, then maybe put the B in front and put A in the back.
It goes to parking ratios, and
You'd have the same. You just have a lower.
No, we'd have more parking in the back because we have more room to do surface parking in the back. So if we also put parking under in the back, now we would have an excess of parking for the back building and not enough parking for the front building.
I think further, Joe, right? Wouldn't you also need to still raise the site for water storage? So it really wouldn't make a whole lot of difference in the height of the building relative to the surrounding area.
I think the height of the building might be a little lower, but more importantly, we don't have enough parking for the residents there, and would seemingly have to make people walk down Jefferson to get to the sufficient parking, which is just not something that is going to allow us to market the units. And we certainly, I'm explaining that very, very quickly. We can show you that with regards to what those parking ratios will be for each of those buildings. Because right now it's 58 units in front and 50 units in the back. We would, we can't necessarily flop that because of the size of the buildings. So we would still have 58 in the front and 50 in the back, but we'd just have another 40 parking spaces back there, which we don't need. So they would have to be allocated to the front building, and again, make people walk down Jefferson.
Jackie, I'll say that we pushed for that hard too. I agree with your thinking on it, and we pushed for it and really couldn't come up with a way to make that work.
And I just have one other comment, and it might be to the 9-foot ceilings. Are you saying to me that people will pay more money for 9-foot ceilings than 8 or 8.5-foot ceilings?
I don't think it's a matter of paying more for it. It's pretty much the standard. I haven't done a project with 8-foot ceilings for 10, 15 years.
But if you had to, you could.
Yeah, we have done them in the past, but it wouldn't be a marketable project from what Andrew's saying, but I haven't done one for many years.
I think if you're selling the location, they're not gonna not go to it because it has 8.5 foot ceilings. It's the location that they're buying into.
I'll let Andrew speak to if they come to his site or to another project down the road based on
We
that.
would not be able to attract debt or equity for, if we were trying to build a 1990s project in 2000, the bank would look at it favorably. There's certainly no way we'd be able to attract institutional equity. It's, as I said, granite countertops and stainless steel appliances and crown molding and plank flooring and those kinds of things. We certainly could go back to sort of, all carpet in the unit and none of those things, but we would never be able to achieve the rental rates necessary to underwrite the project. So
I'm not talking about changing those items you just mentioned. I'm talking just the ceiling height.
we could certainly look at it, Ms. Santini, but my strong inclination is that we would be putting ourselves at a disadvantage by doing that. We can look at, we can ask Mr. Schaefer to go back and take a look at the roof line again, but decreasing the units below 9 feet, I think would be an issue, a real issue.
The result too is only
Dan,
foot two off the building too. It's
Dan, why
not
don't you
Yeah.
take a look?
And just to echo what Joe, Rob, and Andrew were saying, everyone, volume matters. When you walk into the apartment, you have to have that volume. You have to have that sense of volume. And if we don't bring that to the marketplace, we will, I can't say it anymore, kind of bluntly as Andrew did, we're not going to have a project. Could we bring it down to 8.5 or something like that? Maybe, but even that makes me awfully skittish. So I don't think it's an option from our perspective. And it's important to note, the building was designed specifically with the parameters of the development agreement that we entered into with the town. And we meet those parameters. And that's what we move forward with in good faith to create this design so that it was within the bounds of what the town outlined for us.
Mr. Chairman, are there any other questions for Rob?
Any other board members wish to pose a question? Okay, carry on.
Okay. We have, we've heard from the traffic engineer, we've heard from the architect. I do think for your next meeting, Mr. Chairman, we will take a enhanced look at the landscaping along the front of the A building and give you sort of a more enhanced version of that. So to Ms. Santini and Mr. Barletta's concern or question about that streetscape, we'll probably do something there in a colored fashion so that people can get comfortable with the quality or the level of landscape that we'll do. Maybe we'll sort of zero in on that because that seems like a point that is important. So we'll see if we can get down into the weeds a little bit on that. We do have Ms. Gingrich on. I think at this point it might make sense for her to explain where we're headed with the peer review contracts, what the timing looks like on those. And we would expect that the next meeting, both water, sewer, civil, and traffic, that we would probably be doing more listening along with the board and listening to your peer review consultant. So maybe at this time might make sense to bring in Ms. Gingrich.
Sure.
Thank you. So at the next meeting, we are scheduled to have BSC Group talk about the civil site engineering and the stormwater. I think we're going to have the traffic peer reviewer, Green International, completing their peer review of the traffic as well. And I'll be sure to pass along the board's comments to them, comments from tonight to them. The water peer review is underway as well. Not quite sure about their timing as far as next meeting, but they are working on that. And then with the sewer, I believe we need a little bit more information to get Arcadis started on the sewer peer review, but we'll get that going as well. So everything is sort of started and in progress, and next meeting we'll have civil site design, stormwater, and potentially traffic.
Okay. So we're done with tonight's presentation. I do want to open up the meeting to any public comment. I remember that I had not closed, obviously, the public hearing. If there's anybody, Mr. O'Neill, who's on that wishes to speak to tonight's meeting, are they there?
We currently do not have any public callers at the
All
moment.
right. I'm gonna wait a minute. So if you indulge me, folks, I just want to wait like 1 minute. And if there isn't anybody, then we'll move on. Another 30 seconds. You got anybody, Mr. O'Neill?
We do not, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so then we will suspend, or I should say, keep the public meeting open, but suspend comments for this evening. Do any other board members wish to have any generalized comments on the presentation tonight?
Dan, I do, and this might be kind of directed towards Valerie maybe, or maybe Andrew. Question I have is, the original site right now has a parking lot that is all the way at the end of Jefferson Road. And I remember back in the day when this road was put in, I thought at one point, like, the idea was to have the train stop be back at that parking lot and have it be a train station. I could be wrong about that, but that's going to become part of this development now. So that leaves the gravel lot and the paved parking lot that's directly across from Eli's right now, which we've been told is not part of this project, but will be at some point further developed. If that parking lot and that gravel lot are further developed into something that becomes location, Wilmington residents and commuters, is there a potential that could happen and there could be a train stop here with no public parking?
From the applicant's perspective, Mr. Barletta, we're buying these two parcels from Christian Jensen and the Eli family. The long bowling alley site, if you will, that runs parallel to the train tracks is a developable site. The ownership of the municipal lot, I guess I'll leave that to the town and town staff to talk about that. That lot, I believe, is what goes with the North Wilmington T-stop, if you will. Valerie, can you shed any more light on that?
Sure, kind of. So Tony, I'm not sure I understand your question, but I guess you're sort of asking, would there be a situation where there's no parking for the?
Maybe Andrew just answered my question. I didn't realize that paved parking lot that's there right now is owned by the town.
Well, it's there's at least an easement for parking. There's an easement for parking, public parking for the train.
And
So,
the easement is between the gravel lot and Jefferson Ave?
yeah, the paved portion that people park on right now to go to the train.
And that is a town-owned easement?
Yeah, yep.
Okay.
I guess I don't think there would be a situation where we would want to let that go, so.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
So the entrance that I was talking about out of that parking lot onto Middlesex Ave that I was concerned about being right adjacent to Jefferson Road is actually on the town easement.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. Do you mean the one coming out of the gravel lot or the paved lot?
Paved lot.
Okay, yeah, so that's a part of that kind of site circulation for that parking for the train.
And your intention would be, or your recommendation would be to keep that entrance out of that paved parking lot right adjacent to Jefferson Road?
You know, we can have our traffic engineers look at it, but I've used, I used that lot before, and it's really hard to, it could be hard to maneuver without a curb cut there.
And if I might add to that, just in discussion with town engineer and DPW, their intention is to continue to maintain Jefferson to the end of that commuter lot and have the plow trucks come around through the lot, plow the lot at the same time and come out that second entrance. So we can obviously work with Mr. Dirk, our traffic engineer, and your traffic engineer. We're going to look at changing our entrance on Jefferson to one way. We can look at all of those circulations to make sure everything works right, enhance signage, reduce pavement where we can to foster that kind of movement.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't clear that land, kind of landlocked strip, the easement was basically landlocked between the train tracks and that gravel lot. So that's
Yes,
fine.
that is
Clear
not
now.
part, that is not part of the project, Mr. Barletta, and I do not believe that's a developable parcel.
Yep, okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, so I guess we're going to continue this to our next meeting of June 10th. Is that right, Kelly? You with me, Kelly? Okay.
Yes, June
But she's muted. Okay. Kelly, why don't you just go through the next, or Valerie, or whoever has them handy, go through the next probably 3 or 4 meetings that we have scheduled. I just want to remind the board of them, make sure that there are no conflicts given the summer months, et cetera.
Okay, I can do that, Val. So the next one we have is June 10th at 7 p.m. Then June 24th, 7 p.m. July 8th, and then July 22nd, 7 p.m.
Do you know what, Kelly, if it's not too much trouble, can you circulate an email with those dates to the board?
Yeah, of course.
Just so they have them, put
Sure,
them in their refrigerators, whatever, because things are crazy.
sure.
Okay. All right. Is there any other administrative business, Kelly, that we need to take care of?
Not right now, no. We're good.
Okay, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting until our next meeting on July 10th.
So moved.
And do we have a second?
Second,
We have a second by Tom. Okay, roll call vote. I will go Mr. Barletta,
Aye.
Mr. Siracusa,
aye.
Mr. Lepore,
Aye.
Miss Santini,
Aye.
and then myself, aye. All right, folks, take care. Be well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members.
Take care. Good night.
Night,
Right.
guys.